What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Kickoff Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook. Born in Vegas, Will Brinson, Sia Nejad, RJ White, and Danny Brasco here to break down a thrilling Broncos-Browns matchup with some playoff implications. Browns are looking to play spoiler. I actually kind of like this matchup. I think we'll get a better game than we got. Maybe we'll get a better game than we got last night. Although, not going to lie, Josh Allen's like very good for me from fantasy, very good for me from DFS. And I'm rooting against Nick Kostos's Saquon Barkley MVP ticket. So, yeah, good for that haymaker back at Saquon Barkley. How you guys doing?
I mean, he has no chance to win the MVP. So I think you're good on that Josh Allen ticket. Yeah,
I mean, like the only reason it's still alive is there's just not another quarterback who, like, because he beat Lamar, there's not another. It's like he beat Lamar. I mean, like, he's a running back. Like, we plug in Josh Jacobs and he's having that season too, but whatever.
Yeah, he'd have to set the rushing record, I think, to have any shot at being named an MVP.
Yeah. Costas got it like 150 to 1. I told him to cash out if he could. I would cash the hell out of that right now. Or maybe wait for the Panthers game.
Eric Dickerson put out the word. He put out the motivation for him. So maybe Saquon really goes for it. And if he does break the record, it'll be hard to deny him, even though it is a QB award.
Ironically, and we'll get to the game in just a second, but ironically, if the Lions beat the Bills, maybe it hurts Josh Allen's chances, but it could force, if the Lions beat the Bills, it probably means that the Eagles can't catch the Lions for the number one seed. So Saquon might sit in week 18 against your Giants. Okay. Let's dive in. Broncos minus 6.5 in this game against the Browns at home. I don't know, RJ, if you would call it a revenge game for Sean Payton and Jameis Winston. Wasn't Jameis with Sean Payton in New Orleans? I think they're probably pretty much cool with each other. Total here of 41.5. Not a ton of points expected. See, I'll go to you first because, well, actually, Danny, I'll go to you first because you have a pretty nice first half of your teaser in tow. You went last night with the Bills and the Broncos teaser, and you cashed the Bills quite easily.
Yeah, so the Bills got the first leg of that done, and in the snow, they thrive. We know what happens in Orchard Park. Timothy Janser in the chat says, minus 1,000 Brasco picks under the total. My friend, that is a juiced line that you're not going to cash tonight because I'm staying off the total. And like Brinson alluded to, I'm just going in terms of a side with my second leg of the teaser, and that's the Broncos at minus 0.5 now. Got them at a pick them before that 6.5, but all the same, really. I do think they get the job done here. Jameis Winston has historically done well as a dog of more than a field goal. So I do think that there's a chance they can cover the number. That's why I teased it down. Bo Nix has been excellent in terms of limiting turnovers and sacks. He's played really good football for a rookie. And he's on fire right now with Cortland Sutton. I think that they're going to continue clicking. Jameis Winston, we know how many turnover-worthy throws that he has. This Broncos secondary is excellent behind Patrick Surtain and company. And I think they get the job done. But it was a little wide for my liking, the 6.5. So I went with the teaser. And I'll let Sia and RJ break down the spread more. But I like the Broncos to pull it off.
Sia, you're with me. I like the Broncos tonight.
Yeah, I hate to be like Joe Public, and I did this last week when I bet against the Browns with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do think that was a bit of a different game, though. I mean, you're talking about a division game. Just the elements. I think just that adds a lot that we're not going to have with the Browns here. I mean, we've got a featured game for the Denver Broncos, which is saying something. I don't think the Broncos thought they were going to go into this particular Monday Night Football game being as relevant as they are. And I do think that matters a little bit if we want to go narrative shopping. But speaking of, I think the Browns got their nice victory last week, and I just don't see them hanging. I mean, I think this really comes down to Jameis Winston. And, pressure rate, right? Both of these teams can put pressure on the quarterback, but the difference is Jameis Winston is so incredibly turnover prone. You put him in a potential negative game script too, and I think he just becomes even more turnover prone. So that's what this comes down to me. I think these are two solid defenses with Denver getting the edge there. I think these are two kind of average offenses, the Browns being the below average one and the Denver Broncos certainly being average to above average, but add it all together. And I know this is a big point spread here, but take the Jameis Winston factor on the road, and I think they end up covering this spread.
Yeah, for me, I think the Broncos, if you look at Denver, I think they're a good football team. I think they're really well coached. Sean Payton's got the most out of Bo Nix this season. You look at their wins and losses. You know, they have a one score loss to the Seahawks in week 1, a one score loss to the Steelers in week 2, 13-6 game, one score loss to the Chargers, get blown out by the Ravens, and a one score loss to the Chiefs. So they've been in all of these games. More importantly, when they go up against a team that they can are on par with or better than. And I look at Pittsburgh as maybe better than Denver. I think, you know, the record says otherwise. Like they snuck one past the Jets in a week, like quadruple revenge game in New York, but they stomped the Buccaneers. They stomped the Raiders the first time around. They beat the Raiders by double digits the last time. They stomped they've obliterated the NFC South, by the way. They smoked the Saints, the Panthers. And I think you get a Cleveland team that, you know, is frisky now that Jameis is in there. But it's a Cleveland team that, you know, is 3-8, and they're not great. They have gotten beaten badly. 2 weeks ago, they got crushed at the Saints, 35-14. I mean, just a horrible spot. And they did beat Pittsburgh. I think that was like Sia alluded to, more of a fluke game. Cedric Tillman, we'll go to the inactives in a second. Cedric Tillman out for this game, and so that thins down your available pass catcher. So you basically have Jerry Jeudy on an island with Patrick Surtain, you would think. And if the Broncos can stop the run here and make Jameis Winston one-dimensional and force him to pass a ton, I think it puts their defense in a very advantageous position. Yeah, Jameis can get hot, blackout, and go nuclear and win games by himself. But I think you can also get, you know, some bad Jameis games as well against good defenses, and I think that's what we get tonight. RJ, you are on the other side. Ruh-roh.
Yeah, so the Broncos get stomped by the Ravens. You know who didn't get stomped by the Ravens? Jameis Winston. You know who has an elite rush defense? The Ravens. And Jameis did it all by himself in that game. They're down one pass catcher. Okay, you said Jerry Jeudy. They also have Elijah Moore, who's getting targeted a ton before the snow game last week. They have David Njoku, one of the better tight ends in the league. You got Jerome Ford out of the backfield along with Nick Chubb. Healthy Nick Chubb is looking a lot better as we go along. So I don't know. The biggest question is motivation in this game for me. The Browns coming off a big win, their season's over anyway. I wrote down revenge game because I knew you were going to mention it. Jameis went 5-2 in 2021 with Sean Payton as his coach. I mean, that was his best performance as a pro. I think he wants to come up and show out for this game and show his coach that, you know, he's still got that in him. You know, he's a guy that rises to the occasion, I think, in these type of situations. And he'll be dialed in for this matchup. And I think his teammates are going to want him to support him in that matchup. Cleveland's D has been terrible. So I'm not going to make a case for them to slow down Denver's offense, even with Bo Nix, as Bo Nix has been getting better and better as the weeks go on. But I think the Cleveland offense can keep up. I think they can backdoor cover here with Jameis Winston at quarterback. You talk about getting smoked in that Saints game. That was a very weird game where they had like 450 yards of offense and 14 points, and they got smoked by Taysom Hill, which I checked the Broncos roster before we started, and Taysom Hill is not on the Broncos roster. So I think they'll be okay there guarding some of these people. So I think they have enough weapons to keep up in this game, make it a little bit more entertaining offensive game here. Where they perform better than expected, and we get a nice little cover through the back door if we need it. But I don't think they're going to get whooped like in that Saints game.
I did not go hatless. I have too much hair. This is not I don't have to prove I have hair. I have way too much hair. The only reason it's like down is because I just took a shower a minute ago to prove to the chat that I do, in fact, shower. Who tailed Ray Davis? That's right, baby. Ray Davis. Grant, you worry about my hair. That's why I got a new dude. This is Ray Davis dude.
Hey, Brinson, when you hit a gem, a first touchdown, and you're wearing a hat when you do it, you keep the money on the table. When you hit like 30 on the roulette wheel, you keep the chips there. You should have gone with a hat today. I'm telling you.
If I had my poof ball, I'd grab it. I was Mondays. You know, you get to Monday after Sunday. You're watching a lot of football. Maybe you're not as clean cut. Monday, you feel like you gotta. Yeah, freshen up a little bit. So that's where we were. But you're right. I should have grabbed the hat. I should have doubled it back down. All that Ray Davis cash on everything else. Nevertheless, play Ray Davis in DFS too, which worked out quite nicely for me. All right, let's look at our. Oh, by the way, if you're watching on X, come join the chat on YouTube. We got Josh out here sniping bots, and if you're in the chat on YouTube, make sure and drop your questions for props. We can ask questions about the games at all, but the game at all. But I mean, like you kind of got, and I tend to agree with RJ in that I think if this game goes under, it kind of needs to be a blowout, like just a I don't even know because 41.5 is so low. Like just Denver just completely controls it and Cleveland does nothing. I don't think that with Jameis under center, you necessarily get nothing, like Jameis is going to keep chucking and he's got the weapons to get vertical. So I would lean towards the over here, I think as well. But the total, just the fact that it's so low is a little, disconcerting from a, hoping for an offensive explosion perspective. 41.5 is insanely low, when you think about a 6.5 point spread.
Yeah, I think Jameis Winston games just have variance for them. I got trends on opposite sides that made me stay away from the spread itself, why I teased, but they're interesting either way you want to play it. Sean Payton on Monday Night Football is 18-9 straight up, but he's 12-15 against the spread, so he's winning games but not covering perhaps. And Jameis Winston as well, 21-10-1 against the spread when an underdog of a field goal or more, like I mentioned before. So two interesting trends on either side.
And the total there, I mean, I think it's because you look at these two teams, they're considered defense-oriented teams, right? Both of them. And that's just not true with Cleveland. Cleveland's defense has not been good for most of the season. They gave up, 35 to that Saints game. They couldn't stop one player who other teams have had no issue stopping. They've given up 20 in 7 straight games before that. Commanders kind of did whatever they wanted to them, I think, earlier in the season. So this Cleveland defense just isn't what we expected. I think in that Saints game, I was like, I thought Jim Schwartz was the defensive coordinator of this team. What's going on here? It just seems like his defenses are always better than this, and he's always considered one of the top DCs.
He usually has a second-year dip with his defenses for just from a kind of like a macro trend perspective. His defenses are usually great his first year and kind of dip off. I don't really know why, but that just kind of happened over his career.
And actually, a really interesting trend I saw is that Browns were historically good last year in terms of their EPA per play allowed on defense, their efficiency. They were incredible. Teams that have such success on defense the next year actually oftentimes return to middle of the pack. It's really tough to replicate that efficient of a defense year over year. So, I think maybe regression should have been expected, perhaps.
Worth noting, and shout out to Pat Thorman of Establish a Run for this note, but over the last month, the Browns rank 7th in pass rate over expectation, and the Broncos are 6th. So very possible we see a lot more pass volume in this game than maybe we're expecting, which, maybe the over is just a smash play. I don't know. It's so low. Okay, could be bogged down in the red zone type of thing, a lot of field goals. But yeah, I saw somebody in the chat. I'm not a bath bomb guy, Jeff. Somebody said 17-14 book it. A CLE fan who was our boots on the ground in Cleveland. Browns 17, Broncos 14, book it. All right. Amari Thrash. Is it Amari or Jabari Thrash? Legacy game. Whatever. Let's get to the inactives. And Riley Moss out for Denver. Zach Wilson, the emerging third quarterback. And then Cedric Tillman and Dante Foreman out for the Browns, I believe. That's Cedric Wills, of course, out as well. Juan Thornhill, too. Some pretty big names there for the Browns, just in terms of both sides of the ball. Anything stand out to you, RJ?
Yeah, so Drew Sanders not back yet. We're wondering when he was going to come back. Might have been this week, and it's just not going to happen. So we'll have to look next week for the Broncos. The interesting thing about the Browns, the 5 guys were ruled out, so we knew that they weren't going to play 5 of those guys there. But interestingly, in order to, I think, have another defensive lineman on their team, they waived Bailey Zappi. So they only have 2 quarterbacks for the Browns. They don't have an emergency third quarterback today. So if Jameis gets hurt, it might be time to bang all Broncos lines, because if then DTR gets hurt, who's playing quarterback? It's going to be Chubb running the line probably.
That is interesting. All right, worth noting. Okay, let's get to our props. We got 2 guys on this one, including you, Danny. You have 3 props, as well as this is mentioned in the chat, and I assume you know it in the chat. Somebody in the chat, maybe Givers Picks, I think, knew this because you put it in the Discord or put it up on SportsLine. You can sign up for SportsLine, sportsline.com/join. Use promo code WINNERS. Get 60% off your first year, the annual subscription. And then you can sign up for the Discord either on the site, or you can go to discord.gg/sportsline. Join the Discord. You get all the picks. I get alerts when whenever RJ has an experts pick chat, put it in there, get an alert when it goes up. And I assume, Danny, you have put Bo Nix under half an interception in there.
Yeah, I have actually. And I'm mad that you led with that because I told Jeff Stenberg that I'm on strictly overs tonight. And I did lie to him about that. That's kind of an over, betting against the defense, I guess. But I thought he was going to unfollow me on Twitter. And I'm fairly new to Twitter. I can't afford to lose any followers. So I lied to you, Jeff. But I am going with Bo Nix to protect the rock tonight. And he's done a fantastic job of it. Over the first, 4 weeks of the season, he was 30th in completion percentage over expected. All of a sudden, he's 11th. He's gotten really accurate. And he threw 4 interceptions over the first 2 weeks. He's thrown just 2 over the next 10. Bo Nix prioritizing ball security. A lot of the time, Sia alluded to pressure creating, the ability for turnovers before. Bo Nix is also limiting the sacks, and there's obvious correlation between the two. If he's limiting the ability to, if he's evading the defensive line, limiting his ability to be under duress, then he's not making those erratic throws and errant plays. So I think he's going to do so once more. The Browns are second worst in the NFL in interceptions. They've got just 2 on the year, I believe. So they get Bo for his third. I'll be surprised. Getting minus 130 feels like plus EV considering those numbers. So I like Bo to not throw one here.
What else? You have 2 more as well, right?
Yeah.
To make Jeff feel better.
Yeah, Jeff, and all SportsLine members, because I'm not the only guy in on this party. We are hammering down on Courtland Sutton tonight, guy who's just absolutely on fire. First off, I'm going to go with this over 65.5 receiving yards. Thought I was a little late to the party. I think this line opened up closer to 60, maybe 62.5, where some of the other SportsLine analysts got on it. And now it's up to 69.5. It's just going through the roof. And I don't know if the sports books can set it high enough because this guy's gone for 70 plus in 5 straight. He's gotten 8 plus targets in 5 straight games. And no coincidence, it was right after that week 7 game where Bo Nix admitted that it was the 4th quarter of the game, and he realized that he hadn't even targeted Courtland Sutton, his wide receiver 1. Since then, he's made it a priority to target him very often, and he's getting the usage, getting the volume, and having a career season. All of a sudden, he's the 6th most targeted receiver in the NFL. Not only is he getting a lot of targets, he's hitting the deep shots. We know the Browns are very, very liable to give up the big play. I think they've given up a 40-plus yard play in 3 straight games. And Courtland Sutton and Bo Nix have connected for a 20-plus yard game in 9 of 12 this season. So I think you put it all together, and he has another big night. I'm going with his over receiving yards. I'm also going with his over receptions, hammering down on him. This line actually opened at 4.5, and it had a lot of juice on it. So I said, no problem. If you're going to put it at plus money at 5.5, the guy's hauling in 6, 7, 8 catches over the, 9 catches over the last 5 weeks. Then I'll take the plus money. Now this is the regular line. This line is now set at minus 120. So we got some good value there. I think he hauls in 6 catches once more. And it's not on the show tonight, but you'll see it on the site. I sprinkled the touchdown as well at plus 160. Courtland Sutton all the way. If he pops off tonight, we're all making some money. So Bo Nix to protect the rock and Courtland Sutton to go off for the 6th straight game.
Yeah, interesting that you don't see this very often. The lowest cost or the lowest price for an anytime touchdown score in this game is plus 140. Like, I don't remember the last time I saw that in an NFL game. You usually have somebody who's like minus 110 or something like that. And I think it's just, a byproduct of these offenses and sort of how they distribute the ball. But Javonte Williams is a favorite at plus 140 anytime touchdown, which is interesting because he has had some great games and he has had some stinkers. You are also, RJ, on the Bo Nix no interception train.
Yeah, interestingly enough, those 2 interceptions the Browns had, one was against Jaden Daniels, the other was against a pseudo quarterback in Taysom Hill, that game where Taysom Hill went off. He also threw an interception. So It's like they have 1.5 interceptions kind of, because that was just a weird play that a normal quarterback isn't going to make. Nix is a much better passer than where he was his first 4 weeks of the season, to the point where I can trust him in taking him under his interceptions prop. Like you said, just 2 interceptions since week 2. Sean Payton puts him in a situation to succeed. So that's why I like that one. I also like Jerry Jeudy going over 4.5 receptions. Surtain is a tough matchup, but Broncos are middle of the pack in receptions allowed to receivers. They don't have Riley Moss, like we mentioned earlier. 30 targets for Jeudy in Winston's first 3 starts before the snow game last week. Still caught all 6 of his targets in the snow last week. So very reliable receiver for Winston. I think they'll find ways to get him open, get the ball in his hands, even if it's on shorter routes, because he's so reliable. I think James is going to get him the ball early and often, because you didn't mention this part of the revenge game, Jerry Jeudy versus the Broncos.
You're right. What a whiff by me.
Winston wants to get him involved, make him happy, maybe get him a touchdown, but I don't want to play that with how good the Broncos have been at stopping receiver touchdowns. So I do like Judy to get involved early, get a couple of receptions in the first quarter, and then we get to 5 pretty easily, probably early second half.
Yeah, I played a Bronco or a Drake London under receptions against Judy, and I think it was like 5.5, and he might have gotten 6. I think he only had 5. I'm not 100% sure, but point being is like the yardage is where you're not going to have Patrick Surtain give up a ton of yards and probably not give up that touchdown because he's more easily able to just, like he's not going to let him get deep. He'll maybe let him eat underneath a little bit. So you could see that from Jerry Jeudy. So that would be the angle too, I think, on the receptions. I'm going to take Jameis Winston over pass attempts for my prop, 36.5. It's a lot, but I think the Broncos are able to stop the run. Don't think, Nick Chubb, awesome story, finds the end zone against the Steelers in that snow game. I think the snow game contributed to them, trying to run the ball a ton, but Jameis still opened it up and threw it all over the place. And if you get any kind of negative game script here, Jameis is going to throw the ball 40 times. So that's also why, like, you kind of like the over, because you could get a pick 6 going the other way, unless they just absolutely pressure the crap out of him and just minimize the length of the drives. Even then, Jameis is still going to fire off some deep shots, and so I like the over on Jameis pass attempts. Any props for you, Sia? I don't think you have an official play, right?
No official props. I mean, I talked about it on the morning show, and I think on the network show a little bit too. I did like Devon Vele when the prop was 34.5. It went to 36.5, and then quickly up to 39.5 and 40.5 in some places. And that's what's happened if you've looked throughout the day, or if you looked last night versus right now. You name a receiver, their prop has gone up 4 or 5 yards for whatever reason. That's what we see closer to kickoff. We see, point totals like creep up a little bit sometimes, but particularly props. So unfortunately, I can't take Vele at the number. If you want to take him at 39.5, I certainly don't hate it. I might consider maybe just going to another rung of the ladder, taking him 50 plus at like plus 150. And so you're just getting a plus number on that. Maybe you lower your unit size as opposed to taking the true number. I like that. I do like Jameis Winston over pass attempts. I do think that number's pretty high.
It's high.
It's high. But I mean, I kind of get it. And if you're going with a certain game script, it certainly makes sense. I mean, you could honestly correlate that with Nick Chubb rushing unders, which I think are probably good plays from a rushing attempt or rushing yard standpoint. We'll talk about some of the questions. I have other ones that I lean toward, but the number has gotten out of control. But I know we have questions in the chat that we'll get to that.
Yeah, Jameis, for the record, came in against Cincinnati, only had 11 passing attempts, 41, 46, 46, and then just 27 in that snow game. So it's a huge number, but there's a really good chance that this team, again, operating like high pass rate almost the entire season, cranked up even more over the last month with Jameis under center, and 6.5 point dogs on the road. Like, there's just a really good chance he throws the ball 40 times in this game. So I like that prop a lot. All right, let's get to the chat. We got a bunch of them. Bo Nix, this is from Tasha. Bo Nix over 21.5 passing completions.
I don't
think you like that. You only like that if you don't like the Broncos to cover, right? Because they could be running in the second half, and his volume might be 25 attempts. So that's walking a thin line to get 22.
Yeah.
I mean, in these, yeah. I mean, like, I'm not trying to game log scout here because I don't think that's an accurate. Like, I don't think game logs is an accurate way to figure out props. But I mean, like, 25 completions, 28 completions in their 2, blowout wins against the Raiders in Atlanta. I think it comes down to, will they be able, because with a Sean Payton offense and Bo Nix, will they be able to run? If they're able to run, you might see a game like the New Orleans game where they destroyed the Saints 33-10 and he only attempted 26 passes and they just ran Javonte Williams. So, like, if they can run, he won't lean on Bo Nix. If they're unable to run, he thinks that they can't, or, like you pointed out, we talked about before the show, RJ, with the Raiders missing a bunch of cornerbacks, he just said, I'm going to drop back Bo Nix and have him throw a bunch and just let it be an extension of the running game, which it always was with Drew Brees too, where you're dumping off to running backs. You don't have a huge yards per attempt. Like, he had 6.5 last week against the Raiders. Maybe that's more of what we see, but you are kind of walking a fine line of deciding if they get a lead, can they run? Are they going to be milking clock, et cetera, et cetera?
Real quick, I think when it comes to Bo Nix, we have to go back to the pressure rate thing. But, like, the difference between these two guys is just like any other quarterback, they tend to be less efficient when you get pressure on them. Bo Nix not necessarily turning the ball over with pressure, but he's certainly not nearly as efficient. So if you were going to take a Bo Nix over relative to his arm, I would, and I'm not going to take this, but I would actually do it with the pass attempts because I don't think we're going to see as much efficiency. But Will, like you said, or what, like RJ suggested, if you think this is a Broncos game, then I don't know why you would be looking at the pass, even though the pass over expected, we just talked about that. I don't know that this is the game where he hits 22, 23 completions.
Yeah.
You might just be looking longest for completion. You hit a big one, and then that's your Bo Nix positive play. Because if he has 17 for 20, it doesn't matter if at least one of them is 35 yards or whatever you need.
Yeah. Also, I'm thinking now that if the Browns make this competitive, Myles Garrett is in his bag and doing his thing, creating havoc behind the line. Bo Nix hasn't ran in a while. He was featuring his legs earlier in the season, but last 3 games, 3 carries for -5, 2 carries for 5, 1 carry for 5. Maybe if he's under duress, this is the game where he takes off again and his rush yards line back to a low 23.5, where it was earlier in the season where he was catching that often. So I'm not going to play it, but there's a world where I could see him forced to use his legs.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned. No, go ahead, Sia. But I was just going to throw up. We got multiple questions about Bo Nix rushing that I was going to go to. So perfect.
This is another one where we're kind of victimized by the timing of things a little bit, because this was 19.5 almost across the board last night. 19.5, 20.5, and Danny, we talked about this morning as well, where it looks like, oh man, this guy hasn't been running at all the last 3 games. But to your point, you look at the games prior to that and you look at man coverage from the Browns, you look at pressure rate from the Browns, it certainly makes sense for him to take off. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to take it at 22? And in some places, I think it's as high as 24, 25.5 now. Yeah. Do you want to take that inflated line versus the 19.5? Listen, if there's value, there's value. I still, like Brasco suggested, I still kind of lean to the over here of 22.5. But I just feel like with these types of props, when you lose 3, 4, 5 yards of value, it gets tough. Especially in a game, again, 6.5 point favorite at home. Mm-hmm. If he takes knees at the end, that's 3, right? Like we flash it. Somebody put up Bo Nix under 25.5. Somebody else, Mike M point, it's like Bo Nix over 22.5. So it's all over the place. Yeah. I mean, that is literally the difference on 3 knees. If it's a close game and he knees it out, and like you cash one. I mean, you could window it if he knees it out on both of those. I think it's a little thin. He only has he didn't have a game. He didn't have a game with less than 5 rushes before the Kansas City game 3 weeks ago. He has 6 rushes total in the last 3 weeks. So so what's changed? What's changed is that early in the season, he was a rookie quarterback, not passing well, and the team was going nowhere and didn't expect to be a playoff team. Now they're a playoff team, and they look like who's going to beat them for a wild card spot. You don't want Nix to run around and get hurt in week 14, week 13, and then what are you doing, Zach Wilson in the playoffs? That's not going to work for anyone. Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, good point. We mentioned Bo Nix under interceptions. We like it. He takes care of the ball. It's what Sean Payton likes about him. As RG3 likes to say, Bo knows ball. Bo knows ball. Bo Nix and Nick Chubb anytime touchdown parlay. I don't love that one, but I mean, look, I'm never going to tell somebody not to bet an anytime touchdown parlay. I just think, you need Bo. I think the Broncos will try to run it down by the red zone, so you need like 2 stuffs, and then what's the number on that? As Sia likes to ask. I mean, that sounds like it's pretty fun, but like the reality is, how many scoring opportunities inside the 5 are the Browns going to get? Because that's what you're going to need for Nick Chubb. I mean, he has not. Listen, it's a great story. Hopefully, he's better next year, but he hasn't been efficient at all. And this is a tough Broncos defense. It's probably he can get in there. He's the guy for them, but you're parlaying that with Bo Nix. I don't know. 9 to 1 for that is not enough for me for those 2 guys, because you really need like 2 specific set of circumstances for that to happen. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I would just take Chubb at plus 140 and play him. He's got 3 touchdowns in 5 games, getting healthier, and he's going to get the ball if they get close to the goal line. If it's a 1-yard rush after pass interference, that's just who they're giving it to down at the goal line. They don't want to throw it near Surtain or any of these DBs. So I wouldn't mess around with Nix. I would just play Chubb plus 140. I mean, I think there's like other people you could parlay it with. You could go Chubb and do Aldrich Estime and get 120 to 1 or 12 to 1, or Marvin Mims and get 16 to 1. I just think I don't think Sean Payton's going to try and run Bo Nix
down by the goal line if he can help it. So it needs to be sort of a broken play or like a third down bootleg design play from short yardage. That's just my take there.
Cortland Sutton would be a Denver guy to lean on if you're going to do something like that. He is the red zone target for Bo Nix.
Yeah. And if you do Sutton and Chubb, that is 6-1. So yeah, I'd rather do Sutton and Chubb than Nix and Chubb for sure. Yeah. And I mean, Sutton's a beast down by the red zone. He's been balling out. Mm-hmm. Okay. Kadarius Toney and Jameis Winston, sneaky anytime touchdowns.
If you want to Kadarius Toney, say that name 3 times in the mirror and a ghost.
What is Kadarius Toney's 15-1 anytime touchdown? The on Jameis number 8.5 to 1. I see.
Is he 15-1 playing Madden or actual football? He ain't getting a touchdown in actual football.
Yeah. Jameis Winston anytime touchdown. People love look. He ran it in on a miracle 4th down play. Like they are going to run Nick Chubb if they need to. Don't get me wrong. If Jameis, if he rolls out on a passing play and he sees something there, he's going to try and make it happen in a desperation spot. But I think it really needs to be like third down in a must-score touchdown situation, or even 4th down by the goal line for that to happen. So,
and again, they cut their third-string quarterback. So any plays you're not going to call design plays to put him at risk of taking a shot. With only 2 quarterbacks on the roster.
Yeah. Do we like Cortland Sutton TD? Yes. As we mentioned, Steve Lautner, we do like Cortland Sutton anytime touchdown. 50 rushing yards for Chubb. This is from Drew Martin at -110. Seems too good to pass on.
It's a no for me.
Yeah. Game script, he gets thrown out the window, and all of a sudden you got Jerome Ford seeing 70% of the snaps in this game. It wouldn't be that crazy. Sia, any ladders you like?
I would go back to Vele. I think, again, you can get to 50. If you get to 50 plus, it's plus 150. If memory serves 60 plus, you're looking at like plus 240. He would be the guy. I mean, he works, pretty much all areas of the field. He would be the guy that could maybe have that Sutton role where he gets 50, 60, 70 yards. And against this back end for the Browns, it certainly makes sense. I mean, I think his target share is going to stay high like it has been over the last couple of games. So I think Vele would be the ladder play.
I got one potential ladder look for you guys.
Yeah, go for it.
Troy Franklin connection with the Oregon Ducks right there. And 50 plus yards is plus 800. So if we're looking at one bomb against a free safety list Browns team that's given up the explosives, maybe Troy Franklin and Bo Nix connect for the Oregon connection for one big one, and you cash a plus 800 potentially.
Hey, and I'll say this, he doesn't get many touches at all, but Marvin Mims is also that guy that can just get downfield and just grab 50 yards on one catch. So whether it's a screen or just being downfield, I don't know if he's going to be included in this game plan, but I'm looking at it now. Marvin Mims, 25 plus 175. I'd go right to 40 plus at plus 450.
So I'll throw it out. We'll see what happens, but Nick Costas and we're in the group chat. I'm just going to give you a little group chat info here. Pete Briscoe says Troy Franklin gets one tonight. Just throwing out a touchdown tonight. That's just Pete's take. Pete also had him on the better than team as a homer. And Costas said he took, and I think this could be kind of interesting too. Mims has 8 rushing attempts in his last 3 games after 1 rushing attempt the entire season before that. You could potentially parlay Marvin Mims over rush and receive yards with Marvin Mims under receptions because he has 9 receptions his last 3 games. I need to look at the numbers, but that reverse correlated parlay we've talked about where, and if he rips off a long run on an end around, all of a sudden you don't need any, you might not need a yardage. So maybe even look at the ladder for that. Not a ton of rushing yardage. Just 19 rushing yards on those attempts over the last 3 games, but just a thought there. Winston over 35.5 attempts. We said we love that. Yeah, it's an even better number. Mm-hmm. Right next to interceptions. Love that. Vele over 30.5 receiving yards, as Sia mentioned. 39.5. He still is okay with it, but might take it up to the ladder instead. Nick Bonito to record a sack at plus 140. Anybody?
I think I saw this in the Discord. Am I mistaken? Maybe was the Maestro Larry Hartstein talking about this one?
Larry likes this one. He liked over 0.5 sacks because he said it was a push. I think there's some books that give you over 0.25 to even get a half sack, but dude's been cleaning up with sacks. So third string tackle for Cleveland on the left side with Jedrick Wills out. going to be Ifedi again. So, he's journeyman lineman, held up pretty well last week against Pittsburgh, obviously. So that was part of my cap of going with the Browns. Like, if he held up well against Pittsburgh, it's not like this is that much tougher than Pittsburgh. So we'll see if he can do it again.
Yeah. No first quarter touchdown from Gipper's picks, plus 152. Both teams have combined for 7 first quarter touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, like, I think the one concern with that one is that it is a primetime game, and maybe you see some sort of aggression down the field or some sort of trickeration from either of these teams. But certainly I think there's a case to be made that both teams come out and try to run the ball and see if they can do it effectively, and then sort of like lean into the pass if it doesn't work. So I don't hate that. Jameis Winston under 10.5 rush yards.
I like it.
Yeah, I lean that way too.
He has had 27 against the Chargers and has 7. Yeah, I like that. Judy over 4.5 receptions. RJ, do you have 4? You had 4.5, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and I also saw a stat too. I think I'm going to have to tail RJ on that Jerry Judy play. I'm hoping that he can shake Patrick Surtain, but in 4 games that he's played with Jameis Winston, he's averaging 93 receiving yards with him. So they connect far more efficiently and effectively than he was with Deshaun Watson.
Sia mentioned we like the Chubb under rushing yards. He is last week against Pittsburgh, just the second time that he's been over 40% this season. So here's the deal with Chubb. I mean, this is pretty stark, man, in terms of the offensive snaps played. Since he returned in week 7 against the Bengals, they lose 21-14. He plays 36% of the offensive snaps. Against Baltimore, they win 29-24. He plays 59% of the snaps. They lose the next week, 35%. They lose the next week, 30%. They win the next week in the snow game, 66%. In other words, if this is a Broncos get the lead early, Nick Chubb is not going to be on the field for more than 40% of the offensive snaps, and he is probably not going to get to 50 rushing yards. So I like the under there.
Also, you talked about that first quarter touchdown stat about they don't score in the first quarter. Since Winston's come in, I'll give you an inverse one. The fourth quarter, he's had 5 touchdowns the Browns have had 5 touchdowns in the fourth quarter since he took the field as a sub for that Cincy game, and they've given up a ton. They gave up 3 in that Saints game. I think they've given up 7 totals in Jameis start. So the fourth quarters just go wild in these games. So even if you're not betting the total, even if it looks low, in that second half, if you can get a nice little live over 37.5 type of number, could get a little crazy in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I like that. And Monday Night Football overs are 11-4 this season. So Monday night has been an over party for my guy Jeff and company who like to bet the overs.
Both quarterbacks get 200 passing yards at 2-1. I got torched by Jalen Hurts last night or Sunday afternoon. Threw for 100 yards. Like, Bo Nix doesn't have to throw for 200 yards in this game.
Judy, the way I think the game goes, I think he hits that because I think he's passing more than people expect, but because I think it's closer than people expect.
RJ, you mentioned sort of Jerry Judy early involvement, 2+ receptions in the first drive with the FanDuel boost plus 980. I mean,
I like that one.
Sign me up for that. 10-1 to catch hits him with 2 passes early on. You're cashing. I like that, Jen. Thoughts on Elijah Moore receptions over 4.5, even money, and receiving yards over 47.5.
Yeah, it should be high volume for him. The problem is he hasn't been as efficient as Judy. He's had these games that are like 11 targets, 4 receptions. So like you might not get there. But if you think the Jameis is going to throw it 40 times like he did in the 3 games that Brinson was talking about, you kind of figure most receivers should be able to hit these numbers.
I'd look at a live line on Elijah too. If we're right that they're going to be down early, we're going to see those numbers kind of hold because of the negative game script. But I think Judy's number might hold a little bit more than Elijah Moore's is, and it's a decent matchup for Elijah. So I'd look at a live bet for him.
And especially if the Broncos are getting home with the pass rush, getting the ball out quick, Elijah Moore underneath. Okay, All right, we'll move quick. Jordan Akins over 15.5 receiving yards.
I'm not a degenerate enough to play Jordan Akins prop. Sorry.
Exactly.
I know some sharp people that are on Akins overs. He is getting more of a target share than people think, including me. Like I don't pay much attention to him. This has gone up. It's between 13.5 and I think like 16.5 in some places. I'm fine with this. Not something I would bet.
So the Jordan Akins thesis that I heard earlier, like listened to some stuff, it was the Browns ran for the first time all season this like crazy spike in 2 tight end sets. In other words, bringing Akins in for protection reasons. They wanted to run the ball. They did so effectively against somewhat effectively against the Steelers in that snow game. If he doesn't get there early and they have to abandon those 2 tight end sets and put more wide receivers on the field, then he's probably not going to get there. So I think you need a Cleveland can run the ball early and keep Denver from scoring situation.
He has an 18-yard reception in 4 of his last 5 games, so I take that back. Definitely hit his over or an over longest reception if you want to.
Sia, field goal question?
Where's Kylie? Going back to the good old both teams, I don't mind that. The conditions should be great. It's mile high. The air is thin. I think this is a fine bet. Good look to me, Gippers.
Okay. Sutton, 60-plus yards with Judy over 4.5 receptions at plus 154.
It's combining our plays. I think we like that.
Yeah. Njoku over 45. Njoku's been.
Well, prior to last game, he was pretty great. I mean, he gets a lot of targets. I think that's a pretty efficient line, personally.
Okay. Oh, Lord. Bo Nix, longest pass over 34.5, leads the NFL in pass attempts in 20-plus air yards. Yeah. I mean, RJ pointed that out. Likes Bo Nix longest. I thought it was going to be like an insane parlay when it popped up. Judy and Sutton, 50 yards each, minus 120.
Yep. Combining the plays again. Yeah.
Yeah. First half going to go over under 20.5. I would lean under.
I think it's going to be touchdowns. I'll go over.
Okay. Bo and Jameis, 500 passing yards combined, plus 175. That's a lot.
I think it might get there, but I would need more than plus 175 to play it.
Yeah.
I think we all agree Courtland Sutton, if you're going to go anytime TD, that's the play at plus 160.
Or Chubb on the other side.
Chubb's my guy.
Okay,
Yeah,
Chubb's your guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think we like Chubb under. Chubb, 2 touchdowns, 12-1. I don't know.
If you like 1, sprinkle the 2.
Sure. What's Tony's prop to drop a pass? minus 10,000, Gippers.
Yeah, can we bet that on Quentin Johnson?
If he gets thrown a pass.
Yeah. Thoughts on we like Elijah Moore, at least on the as Sia said, the live look is pretty good there.
I love this guy's name, Terrence Boykin. Sounds like a guy that's going to get a sack tonight. And
I know. Or
like, wow, he's really come up for the 5th round pick, man. Terrence doing your thing.
Boykin Sesley sounds like a law firm too, like that handles like a CPA law firm.
Sounds like a sleeper that was in the 5th round, just a stud right now.
Denver minus. I would go Cleveland in the first half. If I was taking anything personally. I like Denver in the game, but I think Cleveland could keep it close in the first half and then pull away.
Yeah. So just real quick on that, like I like the Broncos because I'm playing the variance of Jameis Winston. I'd rather play that variance over 4 quarters than 2.
Yeah, for sure. Jameis over a half awesome interviews. I mean, I think the line I saw was 1.5. Like he's gonna give 2 awesome interviews regardless. Okay.
Brad Bet said it in the chat earlier. Unwavering faith, just unwavering faith.
He's unbelievable. You don't have a parlay, right?
I do. I can say it out loud if we don't have the graphic. I can just do it really.
No, Josh is all over it. It said see a parlay there. I was just making sure.
Yeah, so I mean, this is pretty conservative. I think the number was plus 500 even, if memory serves. Might have been plus 475. Pretty conservative here. I mean, you can take things away. You can add things if you want. This is over at BetMGM. Jameis Winston over a half of interception, which if you look at the bottom here, kind of correlated with Jameis Winston to throw for 200 plus passing yards. And then the rest is kind of like, I'm manipulating the spread here. Denver Broncos minus 2.5 and the under 51.5 in terms of the total. And then Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and Devon Bailey, all 25 plus receiving yards. Again, you can manipulate this however you want. You could include Courtland Sutton. You could bump Bailey or Jeudy up to 50, whatever you want to do. Pretty conservative, but still pays around plus 500.
I love it. All right. We've all had our first touchdown bet called back before, and BetMGM is giving you a second chance with BetMGM's Pro Football Second Chance. Place any first touchdown score bet. If your player doesn't score first but scores second, get your entire stake back in cash. No opt-in required. Here's how it works. Place a pregame straight first touchdown score bet in any NFL game. If your player scores the first touchdown in the game, win your wager is normal. If your player scores the second touchdown in the game, you'll get your stake back in cash. It's that simple. Log into BetMGM for more details. Let's get to our first touchdown picks, and I would love to defer to somebody else to go first here. But the law of the jungle says the man with two. Ray Davis last night. That was fun. He got you guys saw it, I'm sure. He got the long run to set up the goal line situation. I was like, I swear to God, if I see that hair coming out of James Cook helmet, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, reward the young kid for getting you down there. They did just that. Goes to the right side, dives in, gets my second diamond of the year. Very excited for that. I'm going to go right back to the backup rookie running back well here with Aldrich Estime, 16-1. RJ and I were talking about what they're going to do with the running backs for Denver. I think it's really hard to predict because, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Javonte Williams absolutely smash against New Orleans. He could get the lion's share of carries, but last week they not only abandoned the run, but Javonte had 8 carries for -2 yards. And I think as a big favorite here, I wouldn't be surprised if they mixed in McLaughlin and Estime a little bit more, maybe take some of the load off of Javonte Williams as they get, because you're trying to get into the playoffs with a healthy team. And I think this could just be an Aldrich Estime game where he comes out, he's a starting running back, he sees a ton of carries early, and he's right there at the goal line, punches it in, 16-1. We're all in the Broncos. Sia, you went with a receiver who, that's a really good number. I saw it at like 11 and 12-1 in other places.
Yeah, it's 16-1 at BetMGM, or at least it was right before this show, because I had to double check, because you're right. Other places have it at 11-1, maybe 12-1. Listen, this is the wide receiver too for the Denver Broncos. And I don't think this running game for the Broncos is going to be effective at all. If I think anybody's going to be effective, I think it actually might be Jaleel McLaughlin over the other two. But it's who knows which one of those running backs is going to take the lead. And even whoever does, I don't think is going to be super effective. I do think it's the passing game early. And yeah, Sutton is the dude. But at 16-1, I'll go ahead and take Bailey as the first touchdown scorer.
RJ, you are also we have just a host of Denver running receivers here. By the way, RJ, you pointed out last week, Raiders cornerbacks out. Sean Payton is not afraid to adjust his game plan and just let Bo Nix dink and dunk it all over the place against a questionable secondary.
Yeah, part of this is a secondary, part of it's the running game. You talked about you can't really trust these guys. They have 8 rushing touchdowns in the season. 4 of them go to the running backs, 4 to Bo Nix. So what do? You turn to the receiver that can act like a running back in some situations. Marvin Mims has been getting more involved the last 3 weeks, 11 targets and 8 carries in those 3 games, just 16 targets and 1 carry in his first 9 games. You mentioned the carries before, but he's really just starting to become involved, not as the number 2 receiver, but as a guy that's getting a few looks a game. It looks like you combine the 2 carries and targets. You're talking about 6 to 7 looks a game. Cleveland's defense can be susceptible to a big play. They've had 5 touchdowns of 40-plus yards allowed this year, plus 2 special teams touchdowns where Mims can get involved on that leg of things as well. If it's a little bit lower scoring early, he can bust one and get you this one as a return man too. So I think there's Mims at plus 21. Love that valet volume as well. Really wish I could have taken a Browns player because I like taking the side that I'm betting. I think it's going to be chop if it's the Browns. Nothing else really stuck out to me.
All right, Danny.
All right, man, I got to get on the board here. So, yeah, I mentioned it before, maybe a potential bomb play for a little ladder look, but I'd rather bet on the end zone look with Troy Franklin, potentially getting in first. Bo Nix was talking him up, too. They finally scored their first touchdown together a couple weeks ago, and he was really excited about his red zone awareness and the play he made back there to find him. So I think he could do it again. By the way, everyone's talking about tailing RJ, I'm tailing Sia. I'm tailing everybody. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on all these first two scores from now on. Put 5, 10, but whatever you want. Put a little pizza money on each one, and you should profit at the rate that these guys are hitting. So obviously my colleagues are doing better than me. I'm going to tail them as well. Good call, guys.
Danny, don't be down on yourself. You're doing great.
I'll get one. And when I do get one, it's going to count for 2. I'm going to crack 40-1. You already know.
Does 40-1 count for 2?
I don't know.
There's an unwritten rule that if you hit 40-1 or higher, you get 2.
I like that.
I want like an amethyst or like an emerald or something.
That's
cool.
you're purple. Yeah, like a purple. I like the idea of coloring the one. If you get 40-1 or more, like it's what? Ooh, what's that purple diamond you have there?
Oh, I might all of a sudden need all the stones of the talisman.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm switching to Nate Adkins then at 40-1.
This Kadarius Toney, like whoever had Kadarius Toney, if like he scores the first touchdown, it's just like we're in the like just come back in the chat and absolutely torch us, especially RJ.
Yes.
All right, let's recap our bets. I have the Broncos -6, Jameis over 36.5 passing attempts. Sia's on the Broncos -6 as well. Danny has already. First, if you this is why you watch the show, folks. You get the Bills on the teaser last night, the Broncos tonight. Courtland Sutton over 65.5 receiving yards. Courtland Sutton over 5.5 receptions. Bo Nix under half an interception. RJ also on Bo Nix under half an interception. He has the Browns +6.5 and Jerry Jeudy over 4.5 receptions. All right, that'll do it for us. Great stuff as always. Let's cash these tickets. Bath bombs by Brinson. Yeah, we're giving those out. For Danny, for RJ, for Sia, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you guys later.